please welcome General Mike Scaparrotti.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Well, good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I appreciate the invitation and you taking the time to come listen to me speak. Now, I would say up front that I had hoped that what you would hear today would be something that would energize you and leave you with a better day as you departed. But after listening to Alex, you probably heard the best thing you're going to hear today already. Okay? But that was tremendous. But I'll do my best to bring that up and close it out in the right fashion. Again, a great opportunity, and one I think is a privilege to be here and humbled to be here. The crowd here has energized me just talking to you as I came in. So my intent today is really I'm going to span a few things because I want to talk to you about Joint Base Lewis-McChord, who's right down the road from you, and tell you what's going on there, and about some of the soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines we've got on that joint base. I want to talk to you about First Corps, which I command and is about to go to Afghanistan, and I'll spend a little bit of time talking about my thoughts on this mission that we've got coming up and about Afghanistan, and then close it up again talking about some of our troopers. If there's nothing that you take away today from my presentation, please just go out of here knowing that you have tremendous, incredible young men and women serving your nation today in the armed services. That's my whole point. I want you to feel good about what they're doing. This generation of young men and women have now been at war for 10 years, those who came in early 2000. They represent a generation here of our population that some have served 4 and 5 tours in combat. Almost all of them that came in earlier that are now sergeants or captains or the major I have here with me or this colonel have at least 3 tours under their belt, perhaps 4. Their families have experienced this kind of stress and turbulence. And yet our services, the Army in particular right now, enjoys the best re-enlistment and the best enlistment rates we've ever had in our history. To me, that tells you something about their conviction, about their willingness to serve our country, about the leadership that they have, and certainly about the mission they're on. They believe in that mission. I know that from being downrange, and they know what they're doing is right, and it's good, and it needs to be done. So they're out there every day putting themselves at risk for you and me. And yes, they do it for their buddies, without a doubt, when the bullets fly. And I'll hope to come back to that, Bill. That was an excellent point. When I wrap up here with a story personally about 1st Armored Division, what we call Make It Matter. But I'll talk to you about those things. I first want to start out, though, with a young man here by the name of Chris Waiters, Staff Sergeant Chris Waiters. Staff Sergeant Chris Waiters is that individual on top of a burning Bradley fighting vehicle that had been rammed by a car bomb. It's in Baqaba, Iraq. Staff Sergeant Waiters ran 80 meters down a road through enemy fire. He encountered 2 insurgents and killed them en route to that vehicle. He climbed on top of that burning Bradley, and any of you with service know what a burning vehicle's like that's packed with ammunition at the time. He climbed on top of that vehicle. He pulled 2 of his buddies out of that vehicle, took them back to his ambulance, and provided first aid. And as he was giving first aid, he learned there was a 3rd member of the squad still in the vehicle. He went back across the kill zone. And unfortunately, by the time he got to the Bradley, the 3rd soldier had died. But he brought his body out of that burning vehicle, too. Now, he was known as a medic, Doc Waiters, to that platoon, and loved because he always moved to the sound of the guns. What they said to us was, prior to that event, he'd been nicked in the shoulder by a round, he'd been nicked in the wrist treating somebody else, he'd had a water bottle shot out of his hand while he was drinking from it in another fight. That was just Doc Waters. Next slide. We presented him the Distinguished Service Cross, the 2nd highest award for valor, for his actions that day. I share this with you because there are men and women like that today who have done those miraculous things for their soldiers and for their country. And there's hundreds more like him in our formation today who will step forward and do the same thing courageously when the time comes. Most of them will humbly say, my buddy would have done the same thing, and they mean it. And they would take the same action themselves. Joint Base Lewis-McChord and our formations across the United States and all the services are filled with people like Chris Waiters. Next slide. Joint Base Lewis-McChord, right down the road from you, is one of the most important bases in our nation. It is one of 3 bases that holds one of our U.S. Corps headquarters. Fort Bragg, home of the 18th Airborne Corps, Fort Hood, home of 3rd Corps and our armored units, and Joint Base Lewis-McChord, home of our Stryker units, and 1st U.S. Corps. Our Stryker units were developed at the early part of this fight so that we would have a middleweight fighter. We had light infantry, but they needed mobility and more punch. And we had armor and armored infantry that was heavy, couldn't move as quickly. The Strykers were developed, and their homes at Joint Base Lewis-McChord, a great part of our force today. 3 of those brigades reside there. The others are spread throughout the Army, but they come back to Joint Base Lewis-McChord for the doctrine, for the training. It's where we bring back Strykers for refit, reconditioning, and send them back out to the force. I run the Stryker Symposium for the entire Army. On a monthly basis, we bring all the Stryker leaders together on the internet, and we talk about the issues, both tactical, logistical, etc., for Strykers, and move that great forum forward. But an important base that homes the Strykers, but it also has all of the other types of units that we need to fight, and I'll talk in more detail about those in a minute. You see the C-17 here climbing out of the clouds. McChord Air Base, right there at Joint Base Lewis-McChord, is one of the major hubs for the Air Force in the world. One of the 2 major hubs in the nation. 57 C-17s fly out of McChord. There's about 630 airmen on any given day in real-world missions, deployed in real-world missions. They fly about 40% of the logistic support for our war just down the road from you. Tremendous amount of heavy lifting done for the past 10 years by these crews and the C-17s. Also right there at McChord is the Western Region Air Defense Center. It is the center, one of 2 in the nation, that defends our airspace on a daily basis right there at McChord, a very strategically important center. And then in the other picture I show Madigan Hospital, which is a part of Joint Base Lewis-McChord, one of the finest hospitals in the military system. It is the research hospital for the Army. That's important because as a result of that, we have a wide variety of specialists, and we have a lot of things going on there in terms of testing, research, etc. And we're benefactors, both the military and the veterans in this area, of that great hospital. And I'll talk a little bit more about that if we get into behavioral health, etc., because I'm blessed as a commander to have more behavioral health specialists, credentialed specialists, available to our soldiers as they return from combat than any other post in the nation. Next slide. These stats give you a little bit about what's at Joint Base Lewis-McChord. If you can't read it, I'll just tell you out loud. It's about 42,000 service members of all services, mostly Army, Air Force, but we also have some Marines there. We have a detachment of Marines. We have a detachment of sailors as well. I've been trying to find a single Coast Guardman so we can round it out, okay, but I haven't got a volunteer yet. 62,000 family members, another 13,000 employed on the base. I think it's important to note that within this area, we pump almost $4 billion a year into the economy out of Joint Base Lewis-McChord and its location. One of the other things I want to note, because somebody mentioned it out here, and I know you've got a lot of people that deal with both the airport and seaports here, we're blessed to be sitting where we are because we are a power projection platform, and a great one. We've got 2 airfields on the base. We've got a number of large airfields around us. We have a rail system and a road system that takes us to any number of fantastic ports. This is a launching pad for our nation, and it's a great one because the facilities that are in this area and the community that we reside in. Next slide. Now, these slides I showed for a reason. I've been here since October 15th when I took over. This is a tremendous community. 33 years, I've been in a few posts. The one that I've been at most is Fort Bragg, what we used to call the center of the universe if you're a paratrooper. That's where I started out as a second lieutenant, and I've been back and forth often. Great community there. But this community embraces its soldiers and airmen and service members in ways that I haven't seen. We have 15 community connectors, we call them, around this base. Communities that are connected directly with one of our combat brigades. And the relationship is fantastic. They support our soldiers at home, they support their families at home, they support them when they're away. But those soldiers are connected with helping the family and helping the families in that community as well. And it's just a great partnership. I put this center picture in here for a reason. This is the governor, obviously, Mayor Turner from Puyallup, and myself. About 2 months ago, the Federation of Cities in Washington State invited the military senior leaders in the state to sign a covenant, a community covenant with the state of Washington. 281 cities, mayors represented there at that luncheon, and we signed a covenant in support of the military in the state of Washington. That's phenomenal. I mean, that's something. And I don't know that I've ever seen that happen in my entire 33 years. And that's just an example of what this community does and continues to do for our service members. And I appreciate it, and it's an opportunity to tell you thanks. Now, the other part of that is I want you to know we're a good neighbor. We work hard at being a good neighbor and being part of your community and providing coaches and teachers and all the things that we can do to help you strengthen your community. You'll see here is this pictures of the Special Olympics we hold every year on Joint Base Lewis-McChord. They'll be there this year on the 4th and 5th, that weekend of June. These two pictures show that. This one here is the C-17 at the air show that you know goes every other year there. In between those years, we do a large rodeo for both our Air Force and the foreign ones. It's a big deal with the Air Force. It's the best of their Air Forces come to compete. That's this year. It'll be the rodeo this year. And then in the corner, you see this field here with the flowers in it. That, believe it or not, is one of our danger areas. Okay, now most of those places that I've been on are barren for the most part. We've got a great group of engineers and leaders at Joint Base Lewis-McChord who for some time have been focused on the environment. And we're working hard to be environmentally friendly. We're working hard to lead the way in DOD and the environment. We're about 80% to net zero in energy. And that's what we're driving for, is net zero. That we put back as much as we take in all of the areas. We're doing the same thing with water. We're trying to work water so that we can take what we use and reuse it. And we're doing quite well. In fact, this year, I'm quite proud to say that Joint Base Lewis-McChord won the DOD award for environmental advances on a DOD post. We also were noted for the first time that any DOD post had been noted by a national environmental agency for the same thing. So, and that's not having to do with me, it just has to do with really smart people throughout the chain of command at Joint Base Lewis-McChord who are serious about this, and a group of great engineers who have been doing hard work for about the past 8-9 years with the vision of getting us there. Next slide, please. And if you go away from the Joint Base itself, I'll focus now on First Corps. First Corps is one of your 4 corps in the Army. We call it America's Corps. And I call it America's Corps because it's your corps, and it represents the United States. Our soldiers represent you, your values, and the values of this Constitution. That's what we're here to serve. That's what we represent in all that we do. Within that corps, there are 9 brigades. We have 3 striker, but we have field artillerymen, we have field artillery brigades, we have medical brigades, we have military police brigades, battlefield surveillance. We have everything that we need to fight on that one post. And that makes for a great training environment and for a lethal trained formation that when the country calls, they're ready to go. Now also, at Joint Base Lewis-McChord, you have that variety of conventional units, but you also happen to have within the Army 1st Special Forces Group, one of the few Special Forces groups in our inventory. You have 2nd Ranger Battalion, and you have one of the squadrons of Special Operations aircraft based at Joint Base Lewis-McChord. All very high-end formations, the very best that we have. Joint Base Lewis-McChord and the Corps also runs ROTC training each summer. It is now the only post. We bring all of our ROTC cadets, future officers in the Army, through Joint Base Lewis-McChord for their summer training prior to commissioning. And we're a big demob site. A number of Guard and Reserve units go through Joint Base Lewis-McChord in either mobilization or demobilization coming from real-world missions. And we play a large part in that across the nation as well. On this picture here, you see a couple of, this soldier right here is one of our striker soldiers. Confident, ready for the fight, and well-trained. But that single soldier is also as compassionate as any person you want to run across. And that's what strikes me in all the time that I've spent in the combat zone and I've seen personally. And I want you to take away with you, because they do that. You know, if you look at this picture with the kids around this captain here, that's a very common thing. In fact, in Iraq or in Afghanistan, it's not uncommon to see going through a village the kids coming out to see our soldiers. Children don't go to people they fear, they move to people they trust. And how many have seen the photos today, and even in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, that's the case, because they know who to trust, and they know what a great generation of people this country produces. Now that young man is much like Waiters that I talked about at first, because for him to exit that combat outpost and conduct this patrol takes great courage. Often an unforeseen enemy with roadside bombs or car bombs that they're dealing with are hard to detect. You know that. But just the courage it takes to ruck up every day and go out is impressive to me. When I was in Iraq, we had a patrol where one of the vehicles in the patrol was completely destroyed by a very large explosive device hidden underground. Within about 3 days, I noted that same unit was patrolling the same area, so I went out with my security to link up with them in that area. And it was just south of Baghdad. And as I went through and talked to the patrol on the site, they'd stopped. I talked to the youngest private in the platoon. He had been there about 4 weeks. And it was only about 4 days before that he lost 3 of his teammates in one catastrophic strike. And the vehicle that was destroyed was the one right in front of him. He was driving the vehicle behind him. So I talked to him, just he and I, for a little bit by his vehicle, and I said, "How you doing?" He said, "I'll be okay, sir." I said, "Well, how you doing? How's it going getting back out here in patrol?" And he said, "Sir, you know, we got to get the ruck on and we got to get back out there because these guys are counting on me. We're going to get it done." But that's courage, that it takes every day to do that. Next slide. Okay, on Afghanistan. First Corps is going to be an operational level command, and we will be responsible for the day-to-day activities across Afghanistan. That's really going to be our mission. The reason I put these 2 pictures in here is I want to make a couple of points. The first one is we often don't talk today about why we're there. We're in Afghanistan because nearly 3,000 souls were lost on our soil on September 11th, 2001. And we're there because the central, the hub, the planning hub and the home of Al-Qaeda and associated extremist groups are operating out of Afghanistan, Pakistan. And they're still present in that area. And as you know, with the recent attempts on airlines and other venues, they still are committed to attacking our way of life and our country and our security. The President has given us a mission to ensure that we defeat Al-Qaeda and that we do not leave, we deny that sanctuary to these extremists. That's our mission. But we also have that mission, and I believe it's so important because we have a debt to those of you who served in uniform and went before us. And we have an obligation to our children and our children's children to get this right and to get it done, because they will continue to be a threat otherwise. This picture in the center down here is an Afghan gentleman. As you know, it's a very poor nation, very representative of what you see. but we owe it to his children as well because they've committed to us. And we're making progress there today, and we owe it to them to see this through. They want nothing different than what you want for your children. When I meet with them at a traditional level, the elders, the shuras, they just want their kids to live in a predictable place, a secure place, to have some education and some reasonable basic health coverage so that they can be healthy, educated, and safe. And it's the right thing to do. Next slide, please. Now I'm getting the hook here, so I will speed this up a bit and then take questions so you can ask the questions about Afghanistan you want to ask. But the bottom line is this. I spent a year there last year. I've been back about 10 months. I've been there 3 times since last January, preparing to go back here in July. We're definitely making progress there. The surge is working. We've got the right tools, the right amount of troops, the right resources in place. The surge was put in to stop the insurgent momentum, and we've done that. We've turned it back. We now have the initiative. And we now hold places, particularly in the south, our main effort, in the Helmand River Valley in Kandahar, that was their home. It's the cradle of the Taliban. And we're securing areas south of Kabul and to the east in Nangarhar, and we're driving to turn those over to the Afghans. And that's the second part of this. My job this next year is to work myself out of a job. Okay, I've got to build capacity in the Afghan National Security Forces and their governance so that they can secure and govern their own nation. And the President has set the goal that we'll get that done by 2014. Now, I'm optimistic about this. Am I wildly optimistic? No, I'll be frank with you. This is a tough, tough job. There are things we don't control there. We're going to try to control. But I'm optimistic that we can do it. There's no doubt about it. And we're on the right track today. And so I'm looking forward to the opportunity to go over there and make a difference. On the next slide. On these slides here, I just want to point out a few things. This is road building going on in Afghanistan because you don't hear this often. We put in 1,800 kilometers of international grade roads in Afghanistan since 2001. And where you put a road in that connects municipalities with a rural population based on agriculture, what used to be a farmer that grew mostly for himself and some local bartering can now barter widely and start a business. Where those roads go, the microeconomy takes off. And where there's microeconomy, the people protect that place themselves. That's a fact. It works. And that's what's going on in Afghanistan today. Right here, you'll see girls in school. In 2001, there were 700,000 kids in school in Afghanistan, all male. Today, there's 7.5 million. 37% of those are girls. That is going to make a huge difference as women are in charge and are educated and able to direct this country. Medical. In 2001, 9% of the Afghans were within an hour of health care. Today, 68% can walk within an hour, and 85% with some vehicle help can be there, can have health care, basic health care, within an hour. The infant mortality rates dropped 33% since then. There's a lot of things going on there that you don't often hear about, that you and the coalition countries have paid for and helped make possible. And those are continuing. Next slide. Okay, I've got a couple more, but I'm going to end up for questions here. Again, the slides that I have here just gave you a little bit of facts about how many people from Joint Base Lewis-McChord helped this. There's people there doing your bidding every day and doing it magnificently. Next slide. And I'll leave that up as I talk. Those are the folks that are reaching excellence, and that's only a few. I mentioned the awards for environmental. We've got 3 of the MacArthur Award winners that are captains. There's only 15 of those in the Army a year, 3 at Joint Base Lewis-McChord. One of the Air Force equivalents, one of the best captains in the Air Force at McChord Field. We've got the best artillery NCO in the Army. We got the best band NCO in the Army. We got one of the best sergeant majors just selected for award on there, Sergeant Major Barnes in the Army. A lot of good going on down the road from you. Okay, slip to the last slide. Andrew Toppin. Andrew Toppin was wounded seriously in a vehicle from an explosive device that went through the side of his vehicle, through both legs. Severe burns in an arm, face, both legs injured. To make it short, this is Andrew, less than a year after his injury. He lost one leg, they had to take it, after completing a triathlon. That's courage. And that's the kind of people you got serving you today. Thank you, and I'll take a few questions about that.
Again, draw the attention of somebody with a mic, and then we'll go back and forth between mics.
General, thank you for coming out today. Thanks for your service. We appreciate this community outreach. It is an example of current operations. My concern is future operations on community outreach. Specifically, you have the Courage scroll under there, and you've talked about the Courage of dock waiters and others, but we have only one living Medal of Honor recipient, and I think future operations for community outreach, the inspiration of bravery and intrepidity is important in the future. And I think we need senior generals and admirals to not have fear of what Congress or somebody may say if we put this up, and I want to ask you your response.
No, I agree. I mean, we have incredible things being done day to day on the battlefield, and for whatever reason, we just don't get it out enough. And it is, I mean, you've probably seen Restrepo, the movie, the Korengal Valley, that area, if you've not seen it. Very tough fight. I was responsible for that area of Afghanistan a year ago. A lot of bravery on any given day in the Korengal Valley and down in the Konar Valley and Ganjagal and places like that. And these men are out there. These men and women are out there in our force today wearing Bronze Stars with V's, Silver Stars, Distinguished Service Crosses, Distinguished Flying Crosses. And there are several of those men right now we've got in for Medal of Honor as well. And it's working its way through the system.
Excellent. I've got a question over here.
Please, sir.
General, I was lucky enough to go through basic training there at Fort Lewis and the North Fort. Also, we're a neighbor of yours. The OTC guys do their training right across the street from our large property there. We've been a neighbor of yours for over 50 years. And you have, your team over those years have been a great neighbor for us. And for those in the neighborhood that are a little concerned about boom, boom every once in a while, you can get used to it. And actually it is better than it used to be. So thank you very much for being a great neighbor for that area.
Thank you. We do try to pay attention to that at times and periods. And yes, I am working the traffic problem with your Department of Transportation because it is a problem for all of us.
Yes, can I ask you to quickly touch on Pakistan and the influence of the Taliban in Pakistan? And I guess I would also say that if you read what's in the news and hear what's on the news, you wonder whether our efforts are really appreciated in Afghanistan or not. Can you speak to that? Right.
Well, first to Pakistan. Pakistan is, when you look at solving the Afghan problem, it's a Pakistan-Afghan problem. In a counterinsurgency, if you have a sanctuary like that, you have to deal with that sanctuary to be successful, in my opinion. So that's what our work with Pakistan and a partnership with them is trying to do. One of my efforts a year ago, I had 450 miles of border with Pakistan. In fact, some of the critical parts along Konar, I was the border with North and South Waziristan, where really the Haqqani network and then the extremists stay. So we worked hard with our Pakistan counterparts to do complementary operations, to share ideas. That has been a partnership that's been rough, as you've read in the paper. I do believe that for those that I deal with, that they have interests just like we do. And so when we are trying to press them to get into North Waziristan, what their generals are saying to me is we will get there, but today that is very difficult for us to do given the fight we have in the north. We don't have the size to fight all along the border. We're working through certain areas. And knowing what I know of their army, I understand that problem for them. So that's the one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is, though, that we've got to require a relationship of trust. And that's where we're having problems. But it's essential to making progress. In terms of Afghanistan and their understanding of what we've done for them, I believe they really do understand what we're doing for them. And I will tell you that when you're down on the ground talking to people who live in these villages, the elders of these tribes, it is without a doubt clear that they do not want the Taliban. They don't want another extremist group in charge. They don't want their corrupt officials in charge. They want their government with officials who will care more about them than line in their pocket. And they're behind that. Now, they're also survivors. And what that means is until they see the argument as won, until they really feel comfortable that Jaroa is going to be in charge, that their security forces are going to secure them, that their governors will take care of them, in large numbers, they're not going to make that vote. They're coming that way now. In the last year, as I was leaving last year and now through this time, we're seeing more and more of these tribes in large areas have what's called peace jirgas. And those peace jirgas are the people come together with their traditional elders, which is really the power base in Afghanistan, and coming together with a commitment to support their Afghan forces and to expel the Taliban or other extremists from their tribal land and to secure it. That's happening throughout RC East last year. It's now starting to spread within Afghanistan. It's a start. And what we've got to do is build the capacity of the Afghan forces to meet their requirements, to gain their trust. But those were things that you didn't see happening 2 years ago. That's why I'm optimistic. We've got to keep that moving.
Okay, I guess we're done at this point, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Seattle Rotary Online is made possible in part by a grant from First Choice Health, working with the Washington Health Information Collaborative to use technology to bring better health care to patients throughout the Pacific Northwest. First Choice Health.